Hi, I'm Mike from 1A Auto. We've been selling auto parts for over 30 years.
To pop the hood, there's a little lever right here to the left of the instrument panel. Now we're going to release the safety. It's a little lever here. Push it to the passenger side, lift up the hood. Prop rod is over here. Install it right there. So I'm going to disconnect the airbox right here, release these clips, pull this up a little bit to release it. Disconnect the mass airflow sensor. Just push this button down, pull the connector off. I'm going to release the harness right here. There's a little clip that holds it in. I'm just using a straight blade screwdriver. Slide it in there to release the clip. All I did was push down on the clip right here on one side, pull it out a little bit, and push down on the other clip, pulled it out. I'm going to disconnect the hose right here. I'm going to use some needle nose pliers and squeeze this clamp. And I can rotate the hose a little bit back and forth. Sometimes it's a little tricky. And then pull that up there. I'm going to disconnect this intake hose right here. I'm going to use a straight blade screwdriver and loosen up this worm clamp. Could also use a 8mm socket. I'm going to take and rotate this back and forth a little bit. Pull it off the throttle body, just like that. Pull the airbox right out. I'm going to disconnect this throttle body connector. There's a little tab right here. Push down on the tab and then wiggle it out. Disconnect that. Move the wire out of your way. So we're going to take this hose off right here. Use some needle nose, squeeze this clamp, just work it back and forth, pull that off, set it aside. I'm going to disconnect this connector right here. There's a little tab right here, you push on that, slide it off. I want to remove this wiring harness from the intake right here. Just take a straight blade tool, slide it back. Push on the and take the straight blade tool and push on this little lock tab. Push it through a little bit and push on the other lock tab. Pull it through. Next we're going to take this hose off. I'll use my needle nose. Squeeze that clamp and then take the hose and just work it back and forth a little bit. Slide it off. And this hose, I'll take this hose off. Just use my needle nose. Slide the clamp off. Get it out of your way. And then grab the hose. Work it back and forth. Slide it off. So I'm going to take these two bolts out up top. There's one here and one here on the intake. I'm going to use a 10mm socket, an extension, and a ratchet. Take this bolt out. These are on pretty tight. Once you loosen it up though, you can do it with your fingers. Pull that one out. Next we want to remove these 5 intake bolts. There's one here, one here, one here, one here, and then one on the end. Those are still 10mm bolts. I'm going to use my 10mm socket and a couple extensions to get the right height for what I need, and a ratchet. Loosen these up. Their wiring harness is kind of tight right here, so just keep that in mind. There's 2 hoses that go to the throttle body. You need to take those off. I'm going to use my needle nose pliers. Take that clamp off. Work the hose back and forth. There is coolant in these hoses because the coolant goes through. So just keep in mind some of the coolant may drain out. Make sure you're not doing this while the vehicle is hot. Just push that out of the way. Now I'll take this hose off. Just use some pliers. Take that clamp off. Work the hose back and forth, release it. You can use some pliers like this that are made for taking hoses off. And just go back and forth. And pull that hose off. Set that aside. You can grab the intake. I'm going to pull the dipstick out of the way. Slide it up. The wiring harness is a little bit tight right here. Push it out of your way. Remove the intake and throttle body. Now, disconnect this coil right here. Push on this connector, pull it out. Take a 10mm socket, extension, and a ratchet. Loosen up these bolts. Pull the bolt out. You can grab the coil. Twist it back and forth, and pull it up. So because this coil pack has a seal up here, it seals up the spark plug tube where the spark plug is down at the bottom. Normally we'd use some compressed air, spray it in there, but because the seal is really good, and if you look down in there, you can see that there's no dirt, so we're good. We don't actually need to use compressed air at this time. I'm going to use a spark plug socket. It's a 9/16 spark plug socket. There's a rubber grommet in there that's going to hold the spark plug once it's loose. So I'll take this, use an extension, lock it on to the spark plug, use a ratchet, break it free. Once it's pretty loose, you can do it by hand. Once in a while, pull up on the extension a little bit, see if it's out. There we go. Pull the spark plug out. You can pull the spark plug out of the socket. This is our old plug. This is our new plug. We're gonna just check the gap real quick. The gap is supposed to be around 40 thousandths. And for the old one, this is gapped almost double. It's a little more than 70 thousandths. And the original one, you don't have to gap these, but we'll just check it. It's very close to 40 thousandths. So we'll put that in. This vehicle should run a lot smoother. There shouldn't be any misfires. The new plugs. Install the new spark plug into our spark plug socket. Make sure it stays on there good. And we'll slide it into the hole. Slide it down the spark plug tube. And then we'll start it by hand. There's long threads on these spark plugs, so it takes a while. And then we're gonna torque these using a torque wrench. We're gonna torque them to 14 foot-pounds. We actually sell these torque wrenches at 1aauto.com. That's good. Pull the extension out, spark plug socket. We'll install a new coil. Just slide it in. Make sure the seal's on there. Press it down. And you take the 10mm bolt. Get that started. All right, we're going to torque this bolt to 62 inch-pounds, and then reconnect this connector. Just line it up, lock it in. We'll do the same with the other three. Right. Before we try to install this intake, what I'm going to do is take the throttle body off so that it'll make it easier to install the intake. The other thing is we could have taken this throttle body off before we took the intake out. That would have made it easier taking it out as well. So I'll take some 8mm socket and a ratchet. Take these 4 bolts out. Take this last bolt out, and we can pull the throttle body off. So before I install the intake, I want to just clean off this surface right here. You can use a rag, you can use a little bit of brake clean, just get it nice and clean. I also want to take some compressed air and spray it in the intake port. Get any dust or dirt out of there that fell in. Before we install this intake, you want to keep in mind that you should replace this gasket, this throttle body gasket, and then also these gaskets down here. This intake manifold gasket should be replaced. We're going to install the intake manifold. Just line this up. Underneath here. Keep in mind this wiring harness gave us a little bit of trouble when taking it out. So just try to fish it in behind the harness and then line it up. Once it's in the correct location, we can install the bolts. so we'll get these bolts started. We're going to get them all started before we start tightening them down. You want to get up. And then we have 5 other bolts from down below here. Get those started. These are all 10mm bolts. All right, get those bolts in and started. We're going to snug these down with a 10mm socket and a extension and a ratchet. We're going to try to go evenly from the center and work our way out. We'll just snug these down. Once those are all snug down, we can move to these top 2. We'll tighten these top bolts up. Just snug these down as well. And snug that one down. We'll reconnect this hose right here. We'll use our needle nose pliers. Move the clamp back in position. Do the same with this hose right here. Slide that on there. And reposition the clamp. We're going to reinstall our throttle body. Just line it up with the holes. Take the bolts and get them all started. Okay, now we're going to tighten these down with a 8mm socket and a ratchet. Snug those down. Now we're going to take these coolant hoses and we'll hook these back up to the throttle body. Line this one up right here, slide it on. And this one goes right here. And it's pretty hard to mix them up because they generally want to go to a certain spot. There's a little bracket right here that the hoses go into. And we'll put the clamps on. All right. We'll take our needle nose pliers and reposition the clamps in the correct location. And the same with this clamp. Stick that there. Now we're going to install this electrical connector for the throttle body. Just line it up, lock it in place. Now we're going to take this evap hose, line this back into place over here, and then slide the tube back on, back in position. I'll use my needle nose pliers to squeeze the clamp and then work it on to this purge solenoid. All right, next we're going to install this wiring harness. One thing I forgot to mention, when you're installing the intake plenum, you want to keep this harness to the side because it can get stuck underneath there and then you'll have to remove the intake again. So take this harness, line this up, a little hole for that retainer, and then line the connector up and plug it in. Reinstall the dipstick. Next we're going to install this airbox and snorkel. Line this up over here, over the throttle body. And then you're going to angle the airbox to be able to get in the grooves in the back. Once that's lined up, we can clip this in. And take this hose, slide that hose on that little fitting down there. And I'll take some needle nose pliers and move this clamp down to the proper location. Take a straight blade screwdriver and we'll tighten this worm clamp down on the snorkel. Just snug. Take this wiring harness. Remember also when you were putting the intake on, make sure this harness didn't go underneath the intake. And then we'll clip it in here and we'll lock it into the mass airflow sensor. All right, after we did the spark plugs, now we're going to start the car. It might run a little bit rough when you first start the car. It might have to stabilize, and then once it's idling good, it should be good to go.
Thanks for watching. Visit us at oneauto.com for quality auto parts, fast and free shipping, and the best customer service in the industry.